In this video, I'm going to demonstrate the two-factor authentication feature, which is pretty much brand new. So some of this stuff might change just slightly over time, but as we kind of refine this. But here's how it works. I would just take a quick look at this before you decide to turn this on. Just because once you turn it on, you have to be kind of careful. You don't want to turn this on and then maybe and then turn it off, disable it, and then people are kind of wondering what the heck happened. Especially if you were going to then turn it back on, and then some people, realized before that it wasn't on and deleted the two-factor authentication from their mobile device, and now they're locked out. So once you turn it on, you kind of want to be careful, and unless you're going to just completely disable it kind of permanently, I would advise, not to do that. Okay, so what you can do is there's not that many settings here. You can enable this feature for staff users and for your customer users. What I would recommend doing just is enable it for your staff users only at first, just to kind of get the feel of how it works. And then once you're comfortable, once you feel like you understand how it all works, then go ahead and enable it for your customers. Again, if you even want to. Maybe some people may decide that they just don't want to deal with it, because ultimately, enabling something like this is almost guaranteed. It's going to generate questions. People are going to require support. They lost their key, they lost their device. I mean, it happens. So you got to decide if you really want to do it. This field is basically what if you're looking at your two-factor authentication app, most people probably use like Google Authenticator, or there's other ones from other vendors as well. And this is what the issuer name will be, so the label. And then the additional label would be like your email address. So this basically describes the app. So on my demo here, I'm just going to put GoToMyAccounts only. I'm only going to enable for staff at this point, at this time. I'll do both. Let's just do both. Okay, so it's set up now. And if I refresh the page, I should be able to see, there's the two-factor auth menu item on the left side of the screen here. All right, so this is the settings menu, as you can see. But if I go down to two-factor auth, this is for my own login. Okay, so there's nothing there. I haven't enabled it yet. So it's very simple. It's like other apps that you've seen. If I want to enable it, I'm going to click on this, and then basically at this point it's going to ask me to scan the code. I've got my phone here in my hand, so I'm going to just do that real quick. Let me delete my old one. Alright, so let's add it. I'm going to scan it, and I'm going to wait, and I've got a code to use. So in order to enable this, you have to put a valid code in so that it really knows that it's been set up correctly. I'm going to hit enter. Okay, cool. There it is. It's done. So on my phone here, on my device, I can see that I've got the application is showing there with my email, and I've got codes generating. So perfect. That's what I want. Now, like same thing, like other apps, there are usually backdoors that you can do, and I recommend doing this, and that is using manual codes. So what you would typically do is copy these codes and put them somewhere safe. I would recommend, like if you use LastPass, there is a feature there where you can store secure notes, or just create a record in LastPass, or put it somewhere, in a safe place, a copy of these codes, just in case, you lost your phone, or you can't, somehow you accidentally deleted that record in your two-factor authentication application, and then you can't get back in. Okay, so I've copied those, and if I use some of these codes and I start to, they go down to only 3 or 4, I can always click this and generate a new set of codes at any time. All right, so let's log out, and I'm gonna just to sort of prove that it works, and I want you to see what the login steps look like. So it's just gonna be like normal, except before you get the final thing there, just like, again, you've probably seen this a lot of times. It's going to prompt me. I'm going to put a code in here. I'm looking at my phone here. Hit enter, and I'm in. So that's it. It's two factors. You know, you log in with your password, and you got to have your device around in front of you to do that. Now, in the current state of the application, there's no it doesn't have a feature like remember this, remember or don't ask me again on this computer for 30 days or something like that. Maybe it's something that can be added later, but for now, if you turn this on, you gotta use it every time. So that's how it is. Now, you're probably wondering, so what does it look like for a customer? Can a customer do it? Now, I enabled it for customers, so let's take a look. Let's go to I've got a test company here. Let's log in as that company. And since it's enabled, I should see there an option for setting up two-factor authentication. It's actually the same basic process. I'm presented with a button here to activate it, so I'll do it really quick here. And I guess I'll just add another one. What the heck? Let's scan it. Alright, so now on my phone I've got another entry, except it's with a different email address. It's with the test account's email address. So I will put the code in here to confirm it, and there you go, it's done. So same thing, I've got manual codes here that I can copy and stick those in a safe place. And now let's return to my original session, because I'm going to log in with that end user. Just keep in mind that when your user uses a tokenized login, like a link from their email, the ones that have a certain, they only last a certain amount of time, that bypasses two-factor authentication. So if they click on a button inside of an email that takes them directly, for example, to a payment page, they're not going to get prompted for the two-factor authentication. It will go around it. It's only going to do it if they log in with their password. So let's try it on here. I should get prompted. Don't need that. And I'm going to use the code for the customer record. And this should get me in on the customer side. So there we go. Yeah. So you see, it's basically the same process, but I'm just showing you how it looks on the customer side. So if I go in here and I decide I don't want to use this anymore, I can say remove, and now two-factor authentication is disabled on that account. And I'll do the same thing on this staff. I switched back over to my other browser, so go ahead and remove that one as well. Now, one other thing I want to point out, and you can see this in the settings page. It describes this particular aspect of how two-factor authentication works. So I was mentioning before, if you disable these, so for example, let's say I disable this for one or both of these groups of users, then all those users will be able to just log in without two-factor authentication. However, it's important to note that the keys will stay. So if you were to re-enable it, it's going to turn it back on, and they're going to be prompted to put the confirmation code in there. And again, if you turned it off for a while and they weren't using it, they might decide to just delete that from their app. And if you turn it back on, they're not going to be able to get back in. They're going to, because they have probably deleted that from their app. So it's one of those things you got to be very careful. If you decide to disable these, it's probably more likely you just don't want to use it anymore at all. So like maybe you just didn't like using it, so you're going to turn it off. There's one little trick I kind of didn't mention this either, but it could be done. Is let's say that your customer, for example, forgets, or they lose their phone or something like that, And it says here there's a disclaimer that GoToMyAccounts will not remove the two-factor authentication. And it's true, we won't, but you could actually. There's not a button for it, but all you would have to do is log in as the user. So you could just go, if again, I would just make sure, get them on the phone maybe and just make sure it's really them. But you could just simply log in as that user, and when you do a login as it bypasses also the two-factor authentication, and you could just go right here, and assuming it was set up, you could just say remove, and then your user is back in. So there is technically a little bit of a backdoor when it comes to your customer users to do that. On the staff side, there's not a feature like that. There's no login as. Maybe I'll add that later, but it didn't really seem like it made sense. But what you could do, again, it's just one other way to do this. Is let's say you're logged in already, and you've got a staff user who really lost their phone, they can't get in. You could just disable this, turn this off, just for a few minutes. Just turn it off, get them logged in, let them remove it, or actually turn it off, let them log in, and then re-enable it, and click save, and then let them go to the setting and remove it. It's a little tricky, but you could do it. It is a way of doing it. Okay, but just for the sake of security and liability and stuff like that, as a policy, we're not going to reset them. It's one of those things where you'll have to do it if you want to do it. It's kind of on you. So that's it. If you already know how to use two-factor authentication on your device, then this should be very easy to do, and you can probably understand how it works very quickly and easily. If you're not sure, there's probably a ton of videos out there that you can just go look up, how does two-factor authentication work, and you might want to just look around at a few of those before you decide to turn it on if you're not really familiar with two-factor authentication, just to get familiar. Or even better, for some app that you already use, just enable it and try it, just to make sure you understand how it works. Okay, so that's it for now. There isn't actually documentation yet on the help site, but it's probably going to be basically a copy of what's right here on the screen for the settings. All right, so that's it for now. If you have any issues using the feature, open a support ticket, or just give us a shout out on the chat widget in the app.